Council for Thursday night, February 4th, 2021 to order. Welcome Council and staff. We continue on with our budget presentations, and as has been the case for months, this meeting is being conducted electronically as allowed by the Code of Iowa due to the ongoing pandemic. So first up tonight, Barb, Neal, and CyRide. So Barb, we'll turn it over to you.
Okay, perfect. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for having us. I am pleased to be presenting CyRide's portion of the budget, which starts on page 125 and goes through page 131. Excuse me. Before I start, though, I'd like to take a moment and, sorry, little screen malfunction there. I'd like to take a moment and introduce the division managers that I have with me again tonight. So I have Chris Crippen, Assistant Director of Operations, and then I have James Rundell over here, so Interim Director, Assistant Director of Fleet and Facilities. The budget was also approved by the Transit Board at their December board meeting. So the challenges of 2020 have been significant, but one thing we know for certain is that 2021 is going to be different. So with change brings opportunity, and our mission this year will be to make that different better. So this budget supports CyRide's goal of connecting people to their community with safe and efficient transportation that exceeds expectations. It also supports the goal of reducing carbon emissions and providing a sustainable community in which to live. Like so many other department heads have said, and so many others have had, we have had to reinvent ourselves to align with health mandates and customer services needs. So we've pivoted and adjusted our operations several times through the ebb and flow of 2020. But I wanted to take a moment and really focus on the 130 employees plus employees who have come together to find solutions and to ask what they could do to help. I know if any one group of people is up for what lies ahead, it is our team. Their dedication has been nothing short of inspiring, and my sincerest appreciation goes out to every one of them. CyRide is working hard to find solutions that allow us to continue to deliver the services that our customers depend on every day. And many of the challenges caused by COVID-19 are going to continue into 2021, as well as the challenges we had before, including that downward trend in ridership prior to the pandemic. So FY22 ridership estimates are difficult to forecast due to the uncertainty of the ISU 21-22 academic year. If we have in-person education, we are estimating that total ridership will recover to about 60 to 75% of our pre-COVID levels. So our estimate is about 4.1 million to 4.9 million passengers. One of CyRide's greatest objectives we're working towards is the recovery of our large ridership base. Over $1.3 million, so that's half of our federal funding, is tied to our high ridership and our operational efficiencies, our ability to outperform transit agencies serving much larger communities than Ames. So as the vaccine distribution accelerates, we do plan to expand our public communication so that we can welcome passengers back and ensure that they feel safe riding the bus. By using our CARES money judiciously and taking really a thorough and thoughtful approach to the budget, we've been able to control expenditures without reducing services. So I am proud to be presenting a budget that requires no additional funding from the local funding partners. Our budget is a 3.8% increase over last year's budget request. But because of the CARES funding, it has allowed us to preserve our existing levels of service while still including major initiatives designed to improve the quality and efficiency of service delivery with the same financial support from the funding partners, the three funding partners, as last year's budget. So for the city, That's a little over $2 million. The transit tax rate is about 61 cents per thousand, and that's down 4.38% from last year. As we move to that post-pandemic world, it is going to be important that we continue to have a fiscally responsible transit system. And I know we've talked about it a lot, but CyRide administration and the board will be working on right-sizing the system to ensure that we can continue to deliver the services that the community relies upon, kind of within those financial realities that are now facing our local funding partners. And I know 2 weeks ago I talked about the CIP, and I talked about how the next 5 years and how important it is for CyRide and how successful we've been at securing both state and federal grants. It allows us to keep our system in a state of good repair, but it also lowers the funding partner's financial commitment. So I wanted to highlight some of the capital improvement projects that we're working on this year, since they have changed based on new grant opportunities and grant awards that we've received. So one project that we're very excited about is the purchase of those 2 battery electric buses and their infrastructure. We've been able to fund over 90% of that electric bus project with 2 grants. When the vehicles arrive, they will replace older diesel vehicles, supporting that goal of reducing carbon emissions and providing a sustainable community. We're also working to improve system efficiencies on the number 23 Orange route. We'll be replacing one 40-foot bus with a 60-foot articulated bus. And an articulated bus increases capacity on that route without increasing the cost of service delivery. We were also fortunate to be able to leverage grant money to replace 7 older 40-foot diesel vehicles this year. So with those newer vehicles, they'll be less expensive to operate and they have significantly cleaner emissions. These purchases can be accomplished with a local match from the funding partners of 5% or less. So your commitment to CyRide has really allowed us to leverage our purchasing dollars through state and federal grants. And I know I also talked in the CIP the role of technology, but it will be especially critical this next budget year. So with expected decreases in ridership and revenues, we plan to increase the amount of data collected, making our system as efficient and responsive as possible. We'll be expanding the number of automatic passenger counters. This will provide passengers with that real-time information about the number of people aboard a bus, improving passenger confidence in our system. Internally, this technology provides us better data and will help us to become more agile at matching services to the needs of the community, again, allowing us to be more efficient. And I know I mentioned this in the CIP, but I think it's worth repeating. We were fortunate. We were one of 37 transit agencies that was awarded a federal grant to complete this APC project sooner than we had anticipated in the capital plan. The project was awarded with 90% federal funding, and it will allow us to equip our entire large bus fleet with automatic passenger counters. We'll also be investing in bus display monitors on our vehicles. These will visibly display the next stops along the routes to help passengers with disabilities, ensuring equity and expanding access to individuals throughout the community. As I mentioned earlier, one of our goals as we enter this post-pandemic world is really working on restoring that large ridership base. The system recalibration study that we plan to pursue will help us ensure that our fixed route operations are meeting the needs of the community. But it's also vital that we deliver the highest level of customer service. So our budget does support an investment in employee training and development to ensure that every person at CyRide reflects our core values and fully understands our mission. So I've had an opportunity to have discussions with employees over the past month, really emphasizing the importance of being engaged in customer service. So whether your job is driving a bus, fixing a bus, or supporting service delivery, we talked a lot about we are one CyRide team and we need to continue to work together. I think customer service and focusing on the rider experience is central to restoring that large ridership base. CyRide is a benchmark organization in the transit world, as I know several of you know. With strong employee development, we can continue to set high standards that others will follow. So for people who are unable to use our fixed route service, we do have complimentary paratransit service, which is known as CyRide. CyRide allows access to the community to people who may not otherwise be able to stay in their home. And for others, it allows them to stay in their home. So working with HRDA, who we contract that out to, CyRide kind of closes that transportation gap for seniors and persons with disabilities. Ridership on this service was trending down prior to the pandemic. And as we return to that post-pandemic world, we're committed to continue to work with HRDA to ensure access to transportation for those in the community that really rely on it. We are actively coordinating together to avoid duplication of services so that the investment in transportation at the federal, state, and local from the funding partners can be maximized. Throughout the pandemic, CyRide has continued to operate, and we have proven to be a critical link for many frontline workers. As we plan our services for the future, we need to be thoughtful about the impact of changes on those vulnerable communities. Equity and access must continue to play a major role in our service delivery. And considering any changes, we will look to input from the public to help drive our decision-making processes. We also will continue to work on developing new relationships with other community partners like Ames School District and Des Moines Area Community College to look at access to opportunity for their students, working together to ensure transportation isn't a barrier to their education. This will be a significant budget year for CyRide. There will need to be fine-tuning to our services to ensure that long-term financial stability and ensuring changes to our system maintain access to everyone, regardless of your background or your income. So again, this is a critical time for CyRide, and we know challenges are ahead, but I am confident that despite the challenges, we will continue to deliver the safe, dependable services that has made us one of the best in the nation. If we focus on connecting people, streamlining our processes, and delivering excellence, we will continue to meet the needs of a community as diverse and dynamic as Ames. So that's the end. If you guys have any questions, we'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Barb. Very well done. Council, any questions for Barb or any of her staff members?
Yeah, Barb, I'll start off. 6 months ago or longer, I couldn't have imagined that we would have the budget presentation that we're having today. So congratulations. This is really an outstanding program that you put together for us. And we really appreciate the federal government for its investment in CyRide, making up a critical gap. And just a couple of follow-up questions. Has the Biden administration signaled at all its perspective on transit going forward?
That's an excellent question. He is very pro-transit, so I don't know exactly. So American Public Transit Association is lobbying for additional funding. I'm not sure if CyRide will see a lot of that. It's a lot of the big transit agencies as players in that, but President Biden is a very strong supporter of transit. Actually, the president of American Public Transit is now on his, can't remember what position she took, but she's on his team. So I think that will be helpful for transit. We did about, I don't know, I was trying to remember, a month ago, there was a second round of CARES funding. It's called CRISA. You guys have probably heard. We were fortunate to receive some funding under that. Not all transit agencies can say that. And a lot of that has to do with our really high ridership and the ability to kind of outperform those. So I don't know if I fully answered your question, but I think public transit is definitely in their thought process more than probably the past administration.
And I would agree. I don't think the prior administration had prioritized, and it's still very early on in the new administration. I was just curious if you've seen any signals. The other question I have deals with just where we are. Can you give us a quick update on the status of the trust fund that we maintain with Iowa State and your sense of where it is now and where it's going?
Again, another good question. So We don't know a lot right now. So this is a question we continue to ask ourselves. The students haven't voted for that activity fee increase yet. I need to reach out and actually see, and I don't know, maybe Nicole or Jennifer know exactly when that vote's going to happen, or Rachel, sorry, that vote's going to happen. But I think we have some plans. I think the best thing I can say about that is I believe the students are very much committed to making CyRide successful. So it is my opinion that they'll do all that they can, and we'll continue to work with them. I think I estimated the trust fund balance would be in the positive about $200,000 next year, even without that fee increase. Now, what's happened is it's behind. You see what I'm saying? So the fee increases are about 18 months behind. So the 0% freeze, that unprecedented decision by the regents, is affecting this next year's budget. That's really so then it'll kind of depend on what they give us for a fee increase. Yeah, I don't have a great question. I'd be happy once they tell us what it is going to be to give you more details. I think the biggest uncertainty I have about that is the regents had never before eliminated a fee increase recommended by the students and then ultimately the president. So I don't have 100% confidence what would happen, and that vote doesn't actually usually happen until their June regent meeting. So I feel like it might be premature to know, but I think based on the pro forma and the fact that we got some more CARES money, I think we're all confident for the next 2 years, probably 3 years. And then again, I really would think some kind of system recalibration is in order, just to ensure that the funding partners can support what they've agreed to.
And so maybe I guess I would hope that as there are points of concern for you, that you would be in touch with Steve and Dwayne to make them aware if there are some benchmark signs that are of concern. I guess I would hope that you'd reach out to Steve and Dwayne. You have a more difficult challenge by far than any of other department chairs in terms of modeling the future. So we really appreciate all the hard work you're doing. Very taxing. But I appreciate your answers tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. And I definitely will reach out to Steve or Dwayne. I think they've both been great support for us throughout this. So.
Other questions?
Barb, do we know how much COVID impacted non-student ridership? I mean, obviously the students are a huge percentage of the typical ridership.
Do you want to answer?
Sure.
I'd be happy.
Well, I would say that COVID did affect quite a few areas. You can look at our dial-a-ride ridership, and you can see that that's gone down by about 50%. So I think that people are either looking for different types of transportation during that time. Now, hopefully with the vaccine rolling out, we can have people be assured that they can ride the bus and it will still be safe. We have done a lot of research about COVID and how it spread and what it looks like on public transportation. And we're still seeing that it is very safe to ride buses. It's actually when you ride in cars, that's where they're finding the biggest spread. So don't ride Uber, ride CyRide.
That's a great pitch there, Chris.
Other questions?
I have a question. I noticed, and I like the idea of having the monitors that will display the next stop or other critical information. But I also worry that might creep into some sort of advertising video opportunity. Is there any risk of that?
Do you want to answer that one since you're closest to that, or you want me to? Actually, the displays that I showed there aren't exactly the displays that we're getting. We don't have the displays yet. We were able to kind of uniquely fund the LED signage, which is more like if you've ridden the bus, the stop requested sign, so then it'll ladder through that way. Currently, we have the ones I showed are called infotainment ones. So you're absolutely right. It can sell advertising on it. We are looking at putting that, and James, please correct me if I'm wrong, but we're looking at putting that on 3 buses, correct, right now? But since we own them, the plan is, and I have a conference call probably next week with our advertising firm, that we would dictate that the stop laddering is way more important than any kind of advertising. I don't know if that answered your question, but what we're looking for all the buses is more of the LED signage with the laddering.
Although I will say we did put up ISU's CARES messages on those. So the advertising company was nice enough to break those up.
Yeah, because the ones we currently have are owned by the advertising company. We did not put them in. We did it as a trial on the articulated buses. So if we move forward, I think that is a valid point, David, is that we do make sure that we don't lose control of that.
I think I understand. And I know this is something that the transit board and you would work out. But it is an important decision, and my experience of having sort of omnipresent video advertising in other cities and contexts is something that I think has real consequences. So I do hope you would discuss that robustly before letting it happen.
Yeah, thanks for that insight. I think that's helpful.
You're welcome.
Did you have another question? Tim, did you have another question or comment? Any other questions or comments? Barb, could you just comment on, you said that our ridership helps with the funding, and if it doesn't return to the present levels or original levels, there could be some federal funding consequences. Is that a trend across the entire United States? And if so, is it possible that the hit wouldn't be quite so bad because everyone's ridership has gone down, or is that something that it's just way too soon to tell? And what are you hearing from your contemporaries?
Again, that's a question we're asking ourselves. I will say that everybody's ridership is down across the board, all transit agencies for the most part. I have a sense that university systems are being hit hardest with this because of the online classes and stuff like that. So when we did that pro forma, just to give you a little sense of this, we did not increase any of that stick funding. It's called Small Transit Intensive Cities funding. They've waived it, so we're using 2019 ridership data. So I think, kind of even back to what Tim said, I think the Biden administration is pretty good about understanding that this is a bad year. I think we might use 2019 ridership data for the next couple years until it really does start to rebound. So I am hopeful that we will continue to get that 1.3 million. I'm also on a couple legislative lobbying committees. So I'm on a national one and a state one, where we're actually lobbying to get that stick funding. It's only at 2% right now. We're lobbying to get it at 3%. I have no idea where that would go, but that would be additional dollars for CyRide. So the high ridership, again, I was going to say it, but I don't know how much it feels good and when you're using 2019 data, but we're still third in the nation in rides per capita. So it goes New York, San Francisco, Ames, Iowa. So we're still pretty high up there. If we lost anything, it might be a category, but stick funding is one that we have to keep a close eye on, as well as possibly a census undercount, because a lot of our funding is tied to the population in Ames, so I'm not sure how many ISU students claimed Ames when we did a lot of marketing to say it's where you're at in April, and they weren't here in April. So I think there's some uncertainty, but I feel like, I am confident that we have a good team, and I feel like we can get through this. And I feel like the board does an excellent job, I think, of helping us navigate through it. So that's my best answer, I guess, at this point, and my best prediction.
Thank you. All right. Thank you very much for your presentation. Very well done and very informative. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
All right, we're going to move on to City Council and City Manager. Services, Brian.
Well, good evening, Mayor and Council. It's my pleasure to present to you the City Council budget. This will be a relatively brief presentation. So I will share my screen and away we go. All right, are you seeing the presentation?
We are, but it's both the current slide and the one next.
I'm sorry.
Right.
How about that? Will that work?
That is better than having the two slides.
Okay, well, my apologies. This is a fairly quick presentation. So the City Council's budget is on pages 208 through 211 of the budget book. And really, like most of the other budgets you have seen presentations of this year was really defined by emergency response. That has impacted not only how the council has operated, but also the financial aspects of the budget. And I just realized my slides aren't going to show up very well here. But the one of the major changes this year has been moving to online meetings for both the City Council and for all of our boards and commissions via Zoom. We've also used online meetings for community information sessions and for a lot of internal city business. And so it really has modified how we have operated over the past 12 months. You might recall this is, we are just now rounding about a year where the words COVID-19 were in our vocabulary. So this has been a pretty remarkable amount of change in a relatively short period of time. We also experienced a derecho as if COVID wasn't enough. And that had significant impacts on our operations for not only for those days of the derecho, but also in the aftermath. We've taken a report to you about activities that we are planning to undertake in the future to address some concerns about infrastructure. But it really was a significant disruption as we weren't able to continue providing the same types of services that we do on a day-to-day basis. The City Council met about a year ago to develop a list of the City Council's goals. Normally I would show a picture from your most recent goal setting or goal update meeting, but we rescheduled it, and so it hasn't happened yet. But we will be meeting again this weekend to review those goals and our progress towards them. Again, unfortunately, I think that the goals and the tasks were, our progress towards them has been hampered by the disasters and emergencies that have been thrown our way this year. I don't mean to bring that up as an excuse, but it is a reality that it has drawn away a significant amount of our attention from the initiatives that the City Council has identified. But we do hope to review the goals and tasks and values and identify how we can make the most out of the upcoming year to accomplish what the City Council has prioritized. And then finally, I'm sorry, I have a number of photos, but we were, they aren't showing up here, but we were able to, despite all of this interruption, break out the oversized scissors a couple of times this year for some ribbon cutting events at playgrounds, at restrooms, at the community solar facility. And so we were pleased that we were able to have that little bit of normalcy, and even the golden shovels at the groundbreaking for the Homewood Clubhouse project. And so we're hopeful that next year, or this coming year, we will continue to have some great opportunities to cut some ribbons and make some progress on improvements for the community. That's all for the City Council's budget. I do want to mention two other quick things with regard to the actual dollars in the budget. So one is that normally we have allocated in the budget quite a bit for those special events, for things like the community pancake feed, for the mayor and council's bike ride, and other activities that take place throughout the year. Given the uncertainty of the upcoming year, we aren't budgeting quite as much, or we are not planning for quite as many large events in the upcoming year. We do expect that the events that we may have may be more spread out. So for example, the bike ride is still a good opportunity for us to get out and connect with the community and to have the council members participate as well. But we do think that this is a good opportunity for us to evaluate, are there other ways for us to reach out to the community? So for example, the pancake feed that we have historically had, we didn't have this past year because it's a very close contact event with a lot of food. We also struggled with how that event meets the council's sustainability goal. And so we think this is a good opportunity to explore new ways that we might connect with the community through those events into the future and make them align more directly with the council's goals and visions. The other item that I want to mention that's related to the numbers is if you look at the City Council's budget on page 208, and you happen to look at the percentage change from the adopted, you might notice that there's a pretty significant increase in the council's budget bottom line over the adopted. And that's simply because we've taken over the Metro Coalition finances for the year. So that money shows up in our adjusted and recommended budgets, but there was nothing in the adopted budget for the current year because we didn't know at the time the budget was adopted that money was going to be in there. And so that shows up as a pretty significant increase when in reality it's just that money showing up for the first time. If you take that away, the City Council's overall budget is up very modestly. I think just a little under 2%. So hopefully that explains what that difference is, in case there were any questions about that. So that concludes the City Council's budget. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. We will have a number of special reports related to outside funding requests and council contingency funds and other aspects of the council's budget on Tuesday night as part of the wrap-up session.
Thanks, Brian. Any questions from Brian?
So Brian, where does the $10,000 arts grant money show up? I thought that was coming out of council contingency.
It is out of the council contingency. It was in the 2019-20 adjusted budget, and then it was carried forward. So if you go back and look at last year's final budget or the budget document for the current year, you will see that. But it doesn't. I don't think it's broken out in the draft budget for next year, which is the one you're looking at right now. But it's there.
So I'm a little bit confused about that because last year we had the larger amount that was carried over in the adjusted budget. And this year we're back to 50,000. So are we actually only at 40,000 and then there's 10,000 for that grant? Or what's the situation? It doesn't make sense to me.
All right, let me.
Because it seems like it should be 60,000 if we're just carrying that over.
Yeah, Nancy may have to shed some light on this.
Brian, I think we're carrying it forward to 2021.
Right.
So look at the adjusted column. Look at the adjusted column on the contingency. See, it's $82,000.
Yes, Steve's right. The 82,000 is where that 10,000 for the small arts program money that we approved last year would be. So it's included in the 2021 adjusted number.
Look on page 208.
Right.
You see that? Under city council contingency. So it's
Yeah.
been carried forward to this year.
So does that mean that it's likely to have to be carried forward again in the budget? Because, I mean, I can't see anything happening with this before July.
Well, it
So-
doesn't get done, it can be carried forward again.
Right.
Okay.
It doesn't show up in the 2021 adopted because we never added it into the budget at that time, into the adopted amount. So it only shows up in carry forwards as part of the adjusted 2021 budget.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Okay, Brian, we'll move on to the city manager's budget.
I get to present that one with you tonight. So good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for your time tonight and allowing us to review highlights of some of the projects and services that are supported by the City Manager's Office. I'm going to share my screen here. Does that look okay?
Perfect.
All right. So you'll find the city manager's office budget starting on pages 214 and 215 in your budget book. And I'm going to start with just quickly addressing staffing in our office. Throughout the course of the year, it has remained pretty constant, with the exception of the vacancy in our management analyst position. That position was held by Tashik Kerr, and just over a year ago, Tashik left that position, and we've been put off filling that position until sometime in fiscal year 22. But otherwise, very, very constant with our staffing levels. The City Manager's Office provides support for projects and initiatives and community events. And as you look through the items that are listed on this slide, you'll see the correlation of these items to council's goals, as well as the responsiveness to the community needs, such as areas in internet with the MetroNet construction, the pandemic and derecho under Emergency Operations Center. And then aligning with your goals, we've got the solar project, greenhouse gas emissions, and coming very soon to you, the climate action planning process. A couple of things I want to highlight on this slide is the SunSmart solar farm, which went live, as you know, in late December. And they've sold 68% of their SunSmart power packs, and I'm still counting. And I want to bring to your attention, the next time you're in City Hall, you'll see a monitor installed in the lobby area. That happened this week. And the plan for that monitor is to display the real-time output from the solar farm. We're also going to be adding information about meetings and events going on throughout the city as that monitor gets up and running. So it'll have a dual purpose, but it will provide a visual on what is going on with the solar farm. The second thing I want to highlight on this slide, it's related to the derecho and the pandemic. The derecho has been mentioned in many of the prior departmental budget presentations, so that certainly gives you a sense of the collective response the city provided during that event. But in the city manager's office, there was a lot of work behind the scenes in responding to the public. A hotline had been established and was staffed for many hours over the course of the disaster in the days that followed. There was also an emphasis on making information available to city residents through our information centers, door-to-door contact, and social media. Another responsibility of the city manager's office is to staff 6 of 18 city boards and commissions. The hours and dedication of Ames residents being involved with any board or commission is significant and adds value to the work that needs to be accomplished. And council gets to see some of that work in the form of recommendations that you then get to act on. In addition to the boards and commissions that we have listed here, we also have the Ames Community Institute that's staffed through our office. This body helps address the needs of the city's increasingly diverse community. And as you probably can guess, we didn't have a Community Institute event this year because of COVID. We're certainly keeping that on our radar and looking at what kind of plans we can make to bring that institute back to life. This concludes the budget presentation for the city manager's office. I'm happy to answer any questions. And I do want to make a quick plug that we are still accepting applications for boards and commissions through tomorrow by 5 p.m. And that information can be found on the city clerk's webpage. Thank you.
Thank you, Deb. Any questions for Deb?
You know, all the years I've been on council, it never occurred to me to ask, but why do we provide staff report to those particular boards and commissions?
Because Steve wants it.
Pardon me? You're asking, those are official committees of this council, and therefore we have an obligation that under the open meetings law to make sure those meetings are handled correctly. So minutes have to be taken and direction has to be given to the commission. So I think everybody feels more comfortable if we have a city staff person assigned to each one of your official committees.
Well, I know we've got that obligation, but why, maybe I should have said, why is the city manager's office the staffing point for these? Because, like, for example, the Preservation Commission has planning department staff and a secretary. What is it about these?
We have a lot of work for our staff, and we want to pitch in and say we're going to work some extra hours too. So just piling on more as you every time you create a commission, it's a lot of work for staff, and we just want to do our fair share and have historically pitched in. And we fortunately I don't work as much. I deal with an assistant, but I can assure you, Deb and Brian work many hours. A lot of the committee meetings are after hours, and they spend a lot of time after hours with it. So I think it's try to level the work, and we want to walk the talk with our employees, and we're not going to just give them all the after hour kind of assignments. So that's what we try to do, pitch in along the way.
I appreciate that, and having been on a commission, I know how much after hours work it takes. So thanks for pitching in on it.
Hey, thank you. Diane.
Good evening. I'm pleased to present the City Clerk's Division budget. If you want to follow along, it's on pages 212 and 213. It's my first slide. I want to give kudos to my hardworking staff. So on the top upper right is Amy Colwell, and she has been a part of my office for 2.5 years. And she was a very valuable person to me during the beginning and all through the COVID times when City Hall was closed. And we both learned to do a lot of things that we have not done. I haven't done for years, and Amy had never done. So I want to publicly thank her for all of those efforts. In the middle photo is Renee Hall, and Renee has been with us for 4 months and is doing great work. Carly Watson is in the lower photo, and Carly has been here 2 months, but she has been learning all of the functions of the principal clerk position in the city manager's office area and is doing great work as well. So I'm going to start talking about our revenues, and fees collected for beer and liquor licenses are my budget's main source of revenue. And this year it was down considerably. It was $70,103 in 2019-20. And we had dealt with about a $12,500 loss from 18-19. I did hear from Alcoholic Beverages Division that one of their mitigation strategies for COVID-19 was to delay processing applicants' electronic bank transfers for their license or permits immediately after local authority approval. So ABD has informed me that the credits from the state to the city will catch up. That being said, I did expect some decrease in revenues because we issued fewer renewals, and several establishments did not renew and are not planning to renew. And of course, their reasoning was COVID. 6 establishments did close from July 1, 2019 to June 30th of 2020. So with those establishments closing, that was a loss of revenues just for their renewals of approximately $7,500, because 2 of those were Class E, and we do net the most revenue from Class E licenses. In 2020, we only issued 84 on-premise consumption licenses, which was down about 40 from the year before. And in 1819, 53 licenses were issued for off-premise consumption. So that would be convenience stores and grocery stores. And in 1920, we only issued 41. So that does account for lower revenues from alcoholic and beer permits. Another loss was that we only issued 26 5-day permits in 1920. All of those occurred prior to the onset of the pandemic, and 22 of those were on ISU property. So just to give you a recap of where the fees go once the applicants pay, 65% of the fee paid for licenses for bars and hotels come back to the city, and the most common is the Class C liquor. We do get $1,318 per license, and that is out of the total of $2,028 that the applicant pays. 100% of the fees paid for beer permits, which range from $75 to $200, comes back to the city. So, as I tell you every year, fees are set by the state, and they have not changed for 36 years. In addition to those alcohol licenses, we issue 15 different categories of other permits and licenses. That was down considerably in 1920 as well. So we only issued 561 in that other permit and license category. That was down from 752 in 1819. So accounting for the decrease of 191, aside from the beer permits and liquor licenses, temporary obstruction permits decreased from 153 to 77. And the other biggest decrease came from transient merchant permits, and they decreased from 61 to 40. 34 of those were for selling fireworks. So we had very few transient merchants, which we did suspend for a short while. And notarizations and certifications performed by our staff also decreased. That was because City Hall was closed. So we found a way, while City Hall was closed, due to the request from our customers, to notarize some documents for them and still comply with the governor's proclamation. A very small amount of our revenue comes from development application fees. As an example, the city clerk's office receives $25 of the annexation application fee of $200. That is offset totally, and then some, when we record the annexation. The recording fee for an average voluntary annexation is $357. So that $25 doesn't even make a dent in what our expense ends up being. A small portion of our revenue comes from zoning board of adjustment applications. As you know, due to guest lodging, we had a very large increase in our meetings and in our cases filed. So last year we had 15 meetings, but we had 45 cases that were heard in those 15 meetings. And those filing fees range from $75 to $150, depending on the type of appeal. However, that revenue is then split among planning and housing, the city attorney's office, and the city clerk's office. So then moving to expenses, publishing legal notices and the minutes and ordinances is our largest expense. I did budget $42,000 to offset the cost of what the Tribune charges, and it appears to be accurate at this time. We did expend $43,598 last year, but we did record 62 fewer documents in 1920. And the fee charged by the newspapers is set by the legislature, so we don't have any say in that. Last year, we published 200 documents. Those are again hearing notices, council minutes, and ordinances. Another significant expense is recording documents. So we record agreements, deeds, easements, and plats. Those are the main types of documents that we record. The subdivision documents, which are very costly to record, get recorded by the developer, and that expense is borne by the developer. Last year, we recorded 129 documents. That is down from 141 in 1819. And of course, we have to talk about elections. They're a very large expense for my relatively small budget. Our proposed budget includes $20,000 for the regular city election to be held next November. We will have 4 seats. We will have the mayor, wards 1 and 3, and 1 at-large seat on the ballot. So the city clerk's 21-22 proposed budget does not include any requests for capital. Our files management system is something I'd like to highlight. It allows us to be the most efficient and accurate employees that we can possibly be doing the document searches for our customers. And last year, over 1,000, not sure where my, hold on. I'm going to go ahead and continue without the slide. I'm not sure what happened to it.
And we can still see the slide. It's just minimized. So you can just go ahead and finish up, and I'll put mine on as soon as you're done.
Okay. Thank you. Minimize. Okay, so I'm going to talk about our files management system because that's the highlight of my budget, in my opinion. So we search for 1,000 documents on average every month. At the end of 2020, we had 56 usage authorizations for staff from other departments to also search. And that allows them to be more efficient as well. They don't need to come down to our office to get the documents that they're needing. And it allows them to print and save and email the document. That's it. Thank you. So the biggest users are legal, public works, and planning. So this year we are planning a major upgrade to our system. It is now underway. Salary savings from the vacant secretary position, that was an 8-month vacancy, as well as the unfilled half-time principal clerk position offset the cost of the upgrade. So the main benefits of that upgrade are that it allows for redundancy. So it provides us great security that none of our documents will be lost. It is independent of our IT organization, so it doesn't need any IT resources for its operation. And it allows for disaster recovery should something disastrous occur. So we did not have a complete disaster recovery strategy, and this has really put a lot of fears at bay, because I was always concerned that something might happen and all of our permanent documents would be lost. So I'm very anxious to get this system underway. There are over 122,000 official master documents in our system that have been scanned, indexed, and linked. And with the attachments to each of those, there are over 750,000 files that have to be extracted and converted to the new system upgrade. One of the most valuable features of the system that I did not want to lose enables us to query expirations in documents to ensure that they don't inadvertently expire. So after we run that query, we then issue reminders to department directors that some type of action needs to be taken. And on average, we issue 40 reminders to departments each month. We also track 308 insurance certificates and 113 on average letters of credit per year to ensure that they don't expire before the project is finished or the agreement expires. Requests for documents through the Freedom of Information Act totaled 78 last year. And of those, 49 were considered non-routine. So those require staff from multiple departments to search for the information. The total amount of time and materials charged to the requesting parties of those 49 requests was $7,856.94. However, the city was only paid $177.01. So we go to a lot of work, and then sometimes people do not want to pay. They don't believe that the information is that valuable. So then we've gone to all that work and not received any payment. Of course, they do not receive the data either. The city clerk's budget does show an 8.6% change from adopted, and that is mainly due to the $20,000 that was added to pay the costs of the November city election, and the vacant half-time principal clerk being budgeted for, and then not only budgeted for, but at midpoint with family insurance. So I want to do a recap. As you know, your service to the citizens of Ames requires a great deal of time, much of which is spent participating in meetings. So from July to March, you were meeting in person in the council chambers. It seems so long ago. But since April, the meetings have all been electronic. So the total number of hours spent in those meetings was 135. That equates to an average of 2.93 hours per meeting. And that is up a bit from last fiscal year's average of 2.38 hours per meeting. So you did spend a lot of time in council meetings, but you really accomplished a great deal. So you adopted 691 resolutions and 31 ordinances, and you dealt with 967 items that were listed on the agendas in fiscal year 2019-20. So I'm sure that exhausts you, but that's all I have for my presentation. I'm sorry you didn't see the rest of the slides. Do you have any questions for me?
Thank you, Diane. Any questions for Diane?
Diane, I'm always impressed by what you have to tell us about what you do, because so much of it is not seen by us. So I appreciate all the work you and your staff put in. you said 135 hours in meetings. How many meetings did we have last year? Do you have
We
that?
had 46 meetings.
So, I think that sounds low because I'm so used to hearing 51 meetings or 52 meetings. So I kind of feel like we're making progress, even though our meeting length went up a little bit.
Yeah, so you had a bit fewer meetings, but you did increase the time spent in each one a little bit.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Diane? Thank you, Diane, for the detailed report and all you and your staff do to serve the council. All right, Susan, will Public Relations and Media Production Services.
Okay, good evening. I'm happy to present the Public Relations Office budget, which can be found on pages 216 and 17. As you know, the Public Relations Office functions as the centralized communication services for all city departments and divisions. And just a little bit about how the office is set up. It includes me, Christy Marnin, who works part-time as an assistant, and then our media production staff, which include our new coordinator, Bill Gebhardt, who you'll meet right after me. And I also closely work with Courtney Hinders from our in-house print shop, and she provides us with graphics services, and that's been within the last few years. Being able to provide engaging graphics allows us to display information quickly and creatively, and it's pretty important in today's world of communicating. Graphics are taking on an even more important role. Courtney also helps monitor our visual standards guide so we can ensure that the way that we present ourselves to the community is consistent. So that's helpful. And then because our office is small but mighty, we also rely on key staff members from across the organization that help us do our education and outreach. And in fact, up to 100 other employees are members of our public relations team, which means that they're working on our website or social media. They're involved in video production. They're doing public outreach and engagement or events. The goal of the Public Relations Office has remained constant. We focus on the City of Ames being recognized as the premier provider of municipal services in a vibrant, innovative, progressive university community. So this should look familiar to you. What do? Well, we use a variety of tools to achieve our communications goal. And some of the data that I track includes number of press releases. We hit about 190 this year. We do newsletters, which I know you're familiar with. Traditional newsletter, City Side, which goes in our utility bill. That happens every month. We do City Slickers, which is an internal newsletter for staff, and we do a quarterly neighborhood news newsletter. We do social media. We are currently at about 15 Facebook pages. So we've really focused on niche markets. Public Works is our newest member. Fire, police, I'm sure you're familiar with those, as well as about 5 active Twitter feeds, 5 Instagram, and a variety of YouTube channels. As you can see on the right hand of the slide, that kind of graphics look, those squares, that's a format that works in multiple types of platforms on social media. So that quick display of information is really important. The website, as we know from our resident satisfaction survey, tends to be a very popular place that people get news. So we have about 50 employees that work on updating the website. They're on there. Some of them are on there every single day. Some of them are just less frequently, but the website is a key source of information. So we want it to be timely, accurate, and up to date. Public education and speaking has not been as popular this past year because of our current situation, and recognition events, as we've all noted, just aren't happening the way that they used to. And I mentioned before that print shop collaboration. We all were sad to see all the changes in our recognition events and our asks, our public education outreach asks. So I actually made a little stamp because it was happening so often that our events may be postponed or canceled, that I was stamping a lot of things that way. The 4 main themes, as I look back on the past year, the 4 main projects that kept me the busiest, which we all know would be our emergency response, both to the pandemic and to the derecho. Those involved a lot of communication and a lot of outreach. We had to kind of pivot like everybody else has had to do, and we've had to explore different ways of communicating. The derecho, because of the lack of power, created all sorts of communication concerns. We walked door to door with printed newsletters. We did about 5 of those every day with an update, and we targeted different neighborhoods. We set up the information centers. We did digital updates. We couldn't forget that while people were gradually getting back online, it was a smaller and smaller percentage of people who didn't have electricity. So we also still needed to talk to those people who did have electricity. And so the digital format for information was also very, very important. We've learned during the pandemic the importance of our collaboration with community partners, particularly our partnership with ISU and healthcare organizations. We look to them for the messages, and then we are supporting them by disseminating those messages to the public. We are continuing to be one of those trusted voices that people can go to for information, and we can get them to the information that they seek. You can see a lot of the Cyclones Care messaging. Initially, when we sort of all started down the pandemic road, we were all developing our own materials. And so when we first started doing our floor dots and our signage, we were following the city visual standards guide. And then we kind of had to gradually move over to the Cyclones Care look. The year was also marked by the census 2020. It's the longest census I've ever been involved in. Right when we were supposed to hit it really hard was right when the university shut down. It was, we really won't probably know if our messages reached their audiences or not, but we did try. You see some of, on the far left, some of the community participation. We had many people who came to our photo booths and participated in the Claim Ames outreach. And then as you see, are you an Iowa State student? The squares below those were the paid advertising. We worked with the ISU Daily, and we were reaching out to students through digital means throughout March, April, into May. So just a lot of different outreach. I have worked with all the departments moving forward as we move away from things like public meetings. How do we reach our audiences in ways that we haven't done before? Do we know that we're having good participation in the virtual meetings? These are really great questions. We have had several virtual meetings recently that have had really good participation. We have tried to partner with other organizations beyond City Hall, into churches, into old school ways, getting the word out, posting flyers up in grocery stores. You name it, we'll try it. We are doing daily radio shows, both with KSI and KHOI radio. We're doing an Ames Responds weekly video regarding pandemic information. So we're really kind of mixing things up depending on what the message is and what we're trying to achieve. And we are also looking at different ways to grow our toolbox. And so Public Works mentioned, they are expanding Ames on the Go, trying to get people to report concerns on Ames on the Go. It actually is a nice tracking system. So if you notice an icy street, you can put that on Ames on the Go. You can leave us a comment on social media. You can email us. All of those ways to reach out and encourage that two-way communication. It's very helpful, but we're also looking at how new technology can help. We have started an account on Nextdoor, a neighborhood social networking app. We use Constant Contact in Parks and Recreation, where we're building an audience of Parks and Recreation users. We have e-notification on our website, which we're trying to push more often. Sign up for the news that you want so we can get it directly to your mailbox, your inbox. And, we're open to other ideas that people have, again, looking at partnerships and tapping into trusted voices. We talk about, I know that in these last few evenings of meetings, we've talked about what might happen when we return to a more normalized way of doing business. And I think that we have had some success in this virtual world. And as we look at these bigger projects coming up in the future, such as climate action planning, that maybe sort of a hybrid approach is something that we need to consider moving forward. We talked about the lack of recognition events, but we did have a couple this year, as Brian mentioned. Sunset Ridge, we did the Faces in the Stone. We had our Smart Business Challenge luncheon virtually this year. And we have tentatively planned for some events in 2021. Now we're not planning on having a 4th of July pancake breakfast. We just don't think that that's maybe we're ready for that. But we also think this is an opportunity to sort of explore other ways of outreach. And I think if you look at the success of the park Palousas that Parks and Recreation had that were more targeted, that maybe those are providing more of an opportunity for an exchange of ideas and dialogue rather than a large event that is focused around sort of eating pancakes and rushing off to the parade, looking at something that more generates conversations. And so I'm looking to the council for ideas on what they might be interested in doing and creating those connections back with residents. Of course, this slide is not very specific. So as I usually do, I'm usually ending my presentation with this slide of all these events that we have planned. It's a little bit bare this year, and I will follow up with more details on those events that are set and that we feel safe about going forward with. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Questions for Susan?
Susan, I don't have a question, but I want to thank you for all your work on the census, especially. I know I was a burr under your saddle quite often, sending you emails about opportunities to connect with the U.S. Census Bureau. And I really appreciate all the work you did on that, along with everything else. But I think that was...
Gloria, those were very much appreciated. I got a lot of information out of those links and connections that you helped me get.
Well, I'm glad. But thank you.
Other question, David?
Yes, I'm not sure I followed exactly what you were saying, Susan, about the gist of it seemed to be possibly continuing meetings in a virtual format beyond the time when it's being driven solely by COVID. Is that sort of what you were getting at?
Yeah, I did jump around. I even jumped around quite a bit in my notes. So what I was suggesting is that we have been practicing a lot with the new technology. And honestly, I think we're getting better at it. And I think we're reaching, it's hard to know, did we lose the traditional audience and gain a virtual audience? Is there crossover in the two? Or are they completely separate? I'm kind of excited by the convenience of these virtual public input concepts. And is there a way to partner them through some type of hybrid in the future where we offer both opportunities?
Interesting. Okay, thanks. That helps me.
Susan, as you're going through this report, I was having a bit of a flashback to just all that you did over the course of the derecho, and the importance of getting information out to the community in the midst of that crisis was huge. So we learned a lot, but one of the things I really appreciated that you just heard in the course of your comments was just how flexible and willing to try new things. And so those are really critical skill sets. And so I know I speak on behalf of the council that we really appreciate what you've done for the communication. It's been, you can have the greatest services in the world, but if you don't communicate well with your community, then you're really hamstrung. So thanks for your outstanding above and beyond work.
Thank you. We do have great programs and services, and there's nothing that pains me more to find out that people didn't know about something. So it's constant, and we're a small office, so getting as much help as we can throughout the organization and through you all too, because I see that you guys are out, council members are out in the community sharing the messaging, and I do notice it and I appreciate it.
Any other comments? Well, I'll just echo what's been said, Susan, and council probably isn't aware how much work she puts into the Cyclone Cares, and I think that you had like 15 minutes notice to jump on a Zoom meeting, I think, with Iowa State, and she just embraced it and worked with Iowa State, and I know your name was mentioned many times with Story County Emergency Management to try and help get messaging out. But it's been an incredible year, and certainly the value of a skilled public relations personnel and person that we have in you has been paid dividends in spades. So keep up the good work, and it's been a challenging year. We're not through yet, and I agree with Gloria. The census, like how many conversations we had prior to getting shut down, about that, and fretting about what that's going to look like in the results. So now we gotta wait and see. So anyway, thanks for your report. Appreciate it. All right, we got a new star on the horizon here to share on media production. Is that right?
I certainly hope so.
All right.
Hi, my name is Bill Gephardt. Our budget is on 218 and 219. To start off with, I'm the new media productions coordinator. I've had the chance to meet some of you at different events that we've been in, but I started in April, so you guys haven't been meeting in council the entire time I've been here, so I haven't met you all, but I definitely look forward to that. I want to shout out to my staff, Kate Barbalia and Alicia Abner. Great, dedicated staff that have been here a long time that really helped carry this department before I was hired, but have also just been doing great work since then. And I just want to say how much I appreciate them. Video is everywhere, and especially as everyone's been talking about COVID-19 and the pandemic, we've been everywhere also, posting videos and informations on most of our channels. We have a video on our website, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, as well as what's on channel 12. We're creating things for lots of different departments, which I can get into that a little bit later. Next, you'll see Ames Television. We've kind of done a slow rollout of changing our identity from channel 12 to becoming Ames Television. I call it a slow rollout because we still get called channel 12 by lots of different people in the city, and as well as our citizens as well. We're looking at making this change, one, to be more identifiable with the city of Ames, but two, we're looking at getting our services also put onto MetroNet's internet cable system, which doesn't necessarily have the same channel numbers. And in doing that, we are looking at our contract with Mediacom, and we're not guaranteed to be channel 12 on the dial all the time. So starting to be proactive at looking at something, as well as doing a little bit more branding than perhaps channel 12 is. Again, due to the pandemic, internal and external videos have been something that have really blown up in this department. Internal videos, we're doing lots of trainings for volunteers about doing trainings about COVID, trainings for staff, as well as just other informational videos for staff. And then we're doing a lot of public facing videos that we hadn't done before. Tours of the fire department, tours of the police department, things that typically those departments would go out to the schools or have kids in, which we hope, and I know that they hope that the kids will be back in. But we've been helping them to create those resources and materials to send to schools and do things like that. And it's really been just an influx of video. I see in the future, this is kind of what Susan was getting at, and David, I think you were getting at too, just a little bit of a different arena, is that I know that the fire department wants to be back in the schools doing their presentations. We want them back in the schools doing their presentations, but I think they found an audience socially. I think they found an audience through video online, that even though they're going to be back in the schools, they're not going to want to give up this connection that we've been able to help them create. And all of us at Ames Television, at Media Production Services, are very proud to really be a part of everyone's team. And it's been something that's been really good for us to get to know those other departments, especially I think me being new this year, kind of getting thrown into everybody wanting a video has allowed me to really develop some good collaborations with people. Another exciting thing is our Ames Public Access Television went all digital this year. we used to run on little DVD players that some of them worked and some of them didn't. And we went all digital to where we can accept digital files. While we can't get really good viewership numbers on who's actually watching Ames Public Access, we do know that we're putting out quality programming because moving to digital, we've been able to add cultural musical concerts during the pandemic. They used to go to C.Y. Stevens, and during the pandemic, they produced concerts, video concerts, and we've been able to air them, as well as some other documentaries and even a stand-up comedy show that features comedians from Ames. It's located in Des Moines, but it features comedians from Ames, and those are just things that were not necessarily available to the APA TV previously, because people didn't want to put them on a DVD and send them to us. And so now that we can accept digital files, we've been able to get some good programming that I hope people are watching. So that is really all I have for my presentation. There's not a whole lot that hasn't been said by Susan or the rest of the city manager's office, but we did want to conclude with just a very brief video, just highlighting some of the things that we did this year.
We want to see Don Com again.
That's the problem with video. We want to see the pink bunny in person.
You can go to our YouTube channel and you can watch the entire video. And then I think if you ask Don, he'll put it on at a moment's notice. So
You should have worn that. You should have worn that yesterday when we did his no, just kidding. Thanks, Bill. Any questions for Bill? Bill, I do have a couple of questions. One is in your report on page 219. Can you comment on this lawsuit that was filed by 46 cities against the FCC? It says more appeals may follow. Do you have some information on that? How does that affect us?
Yeah. So far it hasn't. I'm trying to. I'd have to pull it up, but so. Basically, the cities have filed appeals. The FCC has changed the regulations so that the cable providers, so in our case would be Mediacom, are allowed to take out of the portion of funding that they give to the city based on any physical things that they give to the city. So. Our studio across the street, for example, they could actually take that out of the percentage of the funding that they give us, saying that that's part of the funding. Whereas previously, for most cities, anything like that would just been something that they did. And so the cities are appealing that decision to make sure that it's, so that they can have some say in the way that those are divvied up.
And to prepare ourselves for the idea that maybe they would assign a monetary value for, say, the rented studio space across the street, we've been kind of moving things out of there and trying to prepare ourselves if there becomes a day where that isn't an option for us anymore. So we're in good shape now, but if this ended up going poorly for us, we've talked about what our options would be. So we're preparing either way.
And so we've cataloged everything over there. And, while it's in the appeals process, I don't anticipate seeing anything happen. And there's nothing that says Mediacom has to do that. So they can continue to give us that space as a public space for free as well.
Gotcha. And then full disclosure, the APA TV Channel 16, is that on MediaCom also, or is that on different? How
It is. So it is on MediaCom as well, except that the channel number is actually 121-16. So that is very confusing. It's been called Channel 16 since I've got here, and perhaps that needs a bit of a rebrand as well, just because it's on 121-16 now. But we are airing all the time.
So I never have been a MediaCom subscriber, so I don't have access to it. Is there any other ways to get access to all of our public information besides going to YouTube?
At this point on Ames Public Access, there's not a way for us to do that, because truly we are curating the entertainment that's on there, and it doesn't belong to us. And so we are going to try to put that on MetroNet as well. But as far as trying to view it outside of somewhere that's broadcast, there's not really a way for us to do that, because we didn't make it. We don't own the stuff that's on there. And as with public television, public access television, it was meant to be a broadcast that people can access. But as that broadcast technology turned into HD technology, stuff like that has been harder to get into.
And Mayor, just because we do ask that question in the survey, are you a MediaCom subscriber? We have seen that number go down. So of course, our Ames television is always available as a streaming service.
Yep.
And that is the information that we produce, and it is city focused, city programs and services. AP, the public access television is all submitted. You know, it's just what people give to us. And so while it may not be accessible unless you have MediaCom, or perhaps if we branch out, it isn't, we didn't produce it anyway. It's interesting, it's entertaining, but it's not promoting the city programs and services.
And as Susan said, just to clarify, if on the media productions page on the city website is a live stream of everything that goes out on channel 12. So without MediaCom, you can still access channel 12 through the city's website.
Very good.
I have another question, if I might. So my understanding is that since MetroNet is not actually a cable TV provider, there's no question of franchise fees or that sort of arrangement under the law. But it's interesting to hear that you're considering how to get our Channel 12-like content onto MetroNet. The question is, are they at all interested in acquiring that? I mean, is that something that we can actually negotiate with them about? Seems to me that Ames residents might actually want them to do something to get that content on their network, rather than have us just sort of gift it to them and do all the work behind it.
So it was a call from them to give us that, and basically they sent over this list of what they do, but they just said they offer for government access channels to have the opportunity to be on MetroNet. And to be honest, I'm not sure that whether we say yes or no, I don't know that it matters as much to them. So I mean, I think it's just something that in the network they offer, and I don't know that it's negotiating. And like you said, there's no franchise fees or anything like that, because they're an internet company as opposed to a cable company.
That all makes sense. Thanks.
I was thinking less of it being an income stream as I am trying to broaden our reach and communication. And the point is that, you know, we've had this conversation before, and that is, used to be, you know, TV, radio, and print. That was it. Now, my gosh, the world's our oyster, and you got all these different ways of doing it. And I'm presuming MetroNet's getting a lot of good uptake on subscribers, and frankly, I think that would be an attraction to people who are subscribing if they could get that. It might be something they could market. But anyway, it's just it's not a requirement. I was just more curious, and we're mindful of Susan making the comment in the past years. Viewership on 12 has gone on MediaCom has gone down, and so if that goes down, so another way to provide it so people have an opportunity to view it in different modes. Gloria, did you have a comment?
You know, I had a question for Bill. I noticed in the in progress and upcoming activities a reference to research being done to improve the audio quality in the council chambers and upgrade equipment to allow for hybrid live and Teams meetings. I'm wondering if this is connected to a problem that we identified before you arrived. When we first went virtual with our meetings, we tried to determine whether it would be possible to do a hybrid meeting with Zoom, and we're told our equipment wouldn't allow that. Now, I know Teams is part of the new contract that we've got with Microsoft. So what's the relationship between this item and our potential to have city council meetings that may be hybrid, in-person, and electronic?
I mean, I think that is the same issue that was brought up previously. I think when July 1st of last year came around and we weren't ready to be fully open, Steve asked us to look into how we could make these hybrid meetings work. And so we've sort of been researching that, trying to figure out how we could get it to where it's going. And through trial and error, testing a few things, we found, I mean, our audio is one of the biggest hindrances in there for making it work. And so it's just taking some more research. We actually got some new hot tips last week that I'm going to be looking into as well. But the idea being that, yes, we could be hybrid, kind of what Susan was talking about previously too, keeping that Zoom audience even when we are back in chambers and doing all of that stuff as well. I mean, our audio is our biggest issue at the moment, and we're trying to make that work.
So the reference to Teams here is not saying we're looking exclusively at Microsoft. It just happens that that's one of the things we're exploring.
Right. So it's one of the things we're researching. Obviously, because Microsoft Office 365 became one of the packages that we use citywide now, and they do have a go-to-meeting function, Teams. We wanted to make sure that we considered that as a part of what we're already doing. But we have not ruled out Zoom. We have not even ruled out something yet that we're not even using. So,
thank you.
So when you're talking about improving the audio in the in council chambers, that was a frequent criticism of audience. Sometimes we have to get really close to the to the mic, and it's hard when you have a meeting that's 2-3 hours long to not be leaning back a little bit and not getting that sound picked up. So I'm not sure what the solution is, but is that part of the exploration you're doing too?
Yeah, as soon as this was brought up, Susan actually let me know that was one of the things that you guys as council had mentioned also. So our primary purpose is trying to make sure that there's not feedback when we have a Zoom meeting and a live meeting going at the same time. But I think the approach and the way that we've been looking at this and researching the different ways would hopefully be to improve the sound quality both in the audience section and above the dais itself.
Yeah, that big issue is it's going to be either some dead spots in the auditorium, not auditorium, but in the city council chambers. I think that previous people said that the audio was fine for the feed to channel 12 and others, but it was the getting a broadcast out into the city.
Yeah, that definitely takes into account.
Appreciate that. I think that's I know our people will be coming back. Will appreciate that quite a bit. So, all right. Thank you, Bill. Appreciate the informative opportunity for update, and look forward to working with you.
Thank you. Look forward to meeting you all in person.
All right. All right. Moving on to legal services. Mark.
Good evening. My budget is on pages 232 and 233. And I should say that I'm trying to share my PowerPoint, and I'm getting a message saying host disabled participant screen sharing. So Bill, if you're still on and you can help me with that, I'd appreciate it. Or come into my office if you wish. But I'll just start talking while we try to figure that out. Or Dwayne had indicated maybe he could share it. So,
Mark, you should be able to use it now.
okay. Okay, is it there?
It is there, but you need to make it presentation mode.
Okay, and I apologize. I'm not sure how to do that.
Almost there.
Okay, I apologize. I'm trying to figure this out. I did it in a practice the other day, but
Mark, it's the button. If you move your mouse down to the bottom right corner, there's a little easel.
Sort of right under the M is something that looks like a screen. And if you
okay. Well, Bill's here to help me.
Okay.
I'm gonna mask up. Yeah. Yay. Thanks, Bill. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so just a few screens, and okay, can someone remind me how to move pages when I?
So you should be able to enter all your arrows.
I got it. Okay. So anyway, City of Ames Legal Department, our job is to provide legal services to the entire city, city council, city staff. Here's a picture of the team. I always like to show the members. You know, we're a very small department, just 6 people. We've been lucky that we've had consistency in the staffing, that we've had the same people, and so we all know how to work together. And you know, it helps when you just have longevity in employees, and that's something that hadn't always happened in this office. So it's been nice. I think this is the 3rd time we've had this photo. I'll probably keep using it as long as I can because I have less gray hair. And what we do, we advise the council, staff, boards, and commissions, represent the city in all sorts of legal matters, draft and review ordinances and amendments to the city code, contracts, a lot of contract review and drafting contracts, litigate in district court and appellate courts, though there hasn't been much in appellate courts lately, but you know, we do have you know, prosecutions that we do. And simple misdemeanors and municipal violations. And then we assist and coordinate with outside counsel, usually through our insurance company. This is just a chart of the overall pie chart of the overall funding sources. We get funding from a variety of other departments and from the general fund. And our budget allocation, you can see by far the largest part of our budget is our staffing, and because most everything we do just involves our staff, so that's just takes up most of the budget, and we have small amounts for other purposes. So, on pages 232 and 233, you'll see the budget. We cut out $10,000 out of our outside counsel, and that was to just help with the overall city budget in terms of pandemic issues. We participated in virtual conferences for our continuing legal education seminars instead of going places or flying places. Saved us about $9,000 this year. I know that we've the number of closed matters, I think, is probably the most indicative of our workload. 300 plus. I mean, if you just round it down to 300, it's you're talking 100 new matters per each attorney every year. So it's a lot of work, and and that doesn't reflect a lot of work we do because not everything is, comes in and gets docketed into our system as a matter. If I get a email from Diane with, we've got this unusual open records request, do we, can we respond to this? How do we respond to it? I mean, I take a look at that and I get back to her. I don't, we don't docket that in our system as a matter. So there's sort of the informal legal advice that happens all the time, and some things we work on that never don't get officially into our system. I listed some of our recent accomplishments, and I'm not going to go through those because I think you can read them, and in progress and upcoming activities. I had to cut this short to fit on the page because it's pulled over onto another page. But we've had a very busy year this past year. One thing that I realized was an oversight, just because I wasn't thinking about it at the time, was in terms of the in progress and upcoming activities, we will have a very major project in terms of drawing new wards and precincts for the city. And that will happen this fall. Typically, the census is done in April, and the legislature takes action on redistricting the congressional districts and the legislative districts. And then after that, we have 60 days to draw new wards and precincts. And this year, the census is late, and so it won't be in until end of July, they're thinking. And that means the legislature will likely come back into special session in order to do their redistricting. We will then, have a very short time frame, much shorter and faster than usual, in order to get the wards and precincts done. And that's a tremendous job. I haven't been through one of those before. I have been researching the last time we did this 10 years ago to kind of get up to speed on all the decision points that the council needs to make, and and what we need to do to accomplish that goal. If you take a look at Chapter 6 of the Municipal Code, you'll see the rather lengthy and detailed descriptions of the wards and precincts that are in that chapter. So it's quite the job, and that'll be coming up this year. So that's just kind of an overview. Overall, it's a modest 3.7% increase in our budget. And I guess that's all I have to say, but I certainly would be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Mark. Questions for Mark? Mark, could you comment on your last point, what the implications are for redistricting with respect to city council election coming up this fall, especially since it's coming in? My understanding is that it could be that we won't even have information until like end of August. And then council has to go ahead and you have to create new ordinances to define the boundaries. And it's my understanding, if all of a sudden those boundaries get shifted enough that someone who currently serves in that is no longer serving, can you kind of walk us through what transpires based on what you've done research-wise so far?
Well, from what I've read so far, it's that it's typically done within, well, it has to, by law, it has to be done by state laws within 60 days of the legislature setting it. They're talking about the legislature not actually putting their changes into effect until September. And so we're going to have a very short time frame before those fall elections to get everything done. Exactly how those decisions are made, I haven't gotten into that yet. That's, I've got notes of things I'm trying to figure out, and that's one of them. So I refer to the decision points. Obviously, the council has a role in that, and so I'll be looking at that, and I'll be presenting that to you later. But I'm not exactly sure of all the decision points and how those work, but we'll have that worked out by then.
Very good.
So I've started looking at it now.
I just didn't, I'm sure you're already thinking about too, what can you do to prep it? And can council also waive or suspend the rules and do like a second and third hearing, at the same time or same.
Yeah, I think we can do that. Ultimately, this is done by ordinance, so we can waive the rules and do all three readings in one night.
Sorry, not hearing, but the readings. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions for Mark? Otherwise, Mark, thank you very much. Appreciate your time this evening.
Thank you. Oh, if I can say one more thing, I tell you, one of the most enjoyable things I did in the past year was helping out with the derecho. I staffed, some of the information booths a few nights and spent an entire weekend handing out bags of ice. And I enjoyed that not only because it was helping people, but because it was just very different from what I do normally. And but it was especially handing out the ice. It just was rewarding to see how grateful people were to be getting that ice for their refrigerator or freezer. And but I anyway, we took part in helping with the post derecho matters as well.
Thank you. All right, moving on to human resources, Bethany.
Good evening. I'm excited to go through the human resources budget with you tonight. I'm going to attempt, like everyone else, to share my screen effectively here. Okay, can you see the presentation? Okay, great.
Yeah.
So on my first try, that's great news. Okay, so I'm excited to share the human resources budget. So the human resources budget consists of human resources, information, risk management, and the health insurance and health promotion sections. I'll be talking through the HR portion, and then we have our risk manager, Bill Walton, who will be sharing the risk management portion. And then Krista Hammer and Andrea Cardenas will be sharing health insurance and health promotion information. This is our HR team. We felt this was the 2020th photo that we could find and share with you all this evening. So this is a moment in time where we wore our holiday best. We're all wearing our masks and standing very far apart. So we're demonstrating all of the things that we are asking employees to do for the last year. And this is our team. We have added a temporary staff member this year to help us with some of the COVID work that we were doing. And so there are 9 of us all together. We are fully staffed, and this has been a really great team in the last year. So as many departments have been talking about, COVID-19 has played a really significant role in how we've approached our work this year, how we're continuing to approach our work in the next year. And at the basis for everything, our foundation is excellence through people. And so this really provides the framework for how we accomplish our work in human resources. We work really hard to work to the 2 goals of exceptional service at the best price and providing an enjoyable and stimulating work environment. And so COVID-19 has really provided an opportunity for us to demonstrate these goals and to live out our values in a different way. I don't expect you to read everything on this page here. This is just an example of one of the things that we have done. So we have approached COVID-19 in 4 distinct ways to support our employees. We've been providing information to our employees. What you see on the screen here is just a snapshot of our employee extranet. So this is an employee focused portion of our website where we have an FAQ page. So we provide lots of information about what's expected of employees during the COVID-19 pandemic. One example is, what do we expect when it comes to masks, face coverings, staying home when you're sick, what resources are available. So we work hard to provide information to employees. We've created a lot of policies to support employees with leave benefits, with other options for supporting their family life during this time. If schools are closed, how can we support employees? We've been administering leave programs, and we've been doing a lot of contact tracing for our employees and administering return to work programs. This is just another snapshot of just an example of our COVID-19 leave request form. So we've been seeing a lot of this in our department. Even in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic, we have continued doing the things that we normally do, including recruitments. So the recruitments overall have remained pretty steady. Some jobs were held open for a period of time as a cost saving measure, but those positions that were deemed necessary to continue operations were eventually filled. So overall, we've launched about 75 recruitments in the last fiscal year, and we've received about 3,000 applications. This is pretty similar to years past. I think many of us were anticipating that those numbers would go way down, but they didn't. So we've continued to do our good work with regard to recruitment, albeit in a different way. So some of the things that we've done differently when it comes to recruitment is we've had more web interviews than we've ever had before. We've been using Microsoft Teams as a great resource to do instead of in-person interviews. We've been doing a lot of the Teams interviews. When we do have in-person interviews, we make sure we use a large space. We have masks on everybody. We stay far apart. So we're able to keep people safe and bring people into our facilities for job interviews. One of the other things that we've been able to do is some different things when it comes to employee training opportunities. So our Employee Development Center has changed pretty significantly in the last year. We've still been able to offer some amount of in-person training. And so here's a really good example of that. We have all of our employees spread out pretty far. We have far fewer people attending the in-person trainings. We try to have more classes so we can have fewer people, and everyone wears a mask, again, staying pretty far away. We've also started doing more webinar-based trainings, working with media productions to do video trainings, and that's been working really well. So even when we don't have to because of a pandemic, we'll still continue to do some of these things because we're getting greater levels of participation from employees. One of the other things that we've been doing, aside from using large spaces, we've been able to go outside when the weather is nice. Our new employee onboarding happens twice a year. We have anywhere from 20 to 25 people that attend that 3-day experience. It's for new employees. And we get to use our great auditorium to really spread people out and keep that in-person feeling there. And then we can go to our parks and really spread out. And so this is just a good example of some of the ways that we've been adapting during this time of pandemic. Diversity and inclusion has been a large focus in the last year. Last year, we talked about the start of our diversity and inclusion team. That team has continued, and some of the things that we've worked on include sourcing a citywide training option. So the diversity and inclusion team worked through an RFP process. We identified a consultant to provide that citywide training. The goal of training is to provide foundational training for for all city employees. And this foundational training will help us create a common language for employees. And it really is, it's a required training for all employees. We received 10 proposals from a variety of different consultants across the country. We interviewed 4 and then ended up selecting 1, and we will begin that training in about June. So we're also, as a result of the policing report, working with the police department specifically to identify some different training options specifically for them. However, this citywide training, it's for all employees. Another initiative within the diversity and inclusion realm is that we're requesting the addition of a person. So a diversity, equity, and inclusion coordinator has been requested in next year's budget. And that position will focus on, we'll have a citywide focus. We'll work out of the HR department with a focus on recruitment and selection, training and compliance. The person in this role will make policy recommendations. We'll work with the diversity and inclusion team internally, and then have an outward focus by working with the Human Relations Commission. So this position will be really unique because it will have an internal and external focus. Another thing that we've been working on within diversity and inclusion is considering our excellence through people values. Currently, we have 13 values associated with excellence through people. And as a result of Steve's report on policing, we have decided to add another value of diversity, equity, and inclusion. So we're excited to be working on this, and we expect to implement the new value for ETP this spring. And with that, we'll move into risk management with Bill Walton.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to present the risk management budget overview. And as Bethany said, you'll find the risk management budget on pages 252 and 253 of your budget document. My first slide, I thought it'd be interesting to break down what portion of our liability insurance budget goes to each coverage. The greatest is general liability, which for people not familiar with the insurance lingo, that covers claims for damages to third parties for such things as if we have a water main break and we cause damage to someone's property, if we were digging, Streets was digging and they caught a Mediacom or CenturyLink cable. It could include slips and falls on city property, that sort of thing. Transit insurance, covering CyRide, is our next largest, followed by auto liability, and then professional liability and police liability. They're roughly the same cost. Professional liability covers things like employment claims. And then property insurance. By far the largest portion of our property insurance budget goes to the power plant, which also includes the generators and the gas turbine generators and the resource recovery. Municipal, which covers the rest of the buildings the city owns and things, structures in the parks, fences, that sort of thing. And then terrorism and flood are relatively minor costs compared to the others. Our initiatives for this year, we're going to review the liability insurance program. We've already started that. We're going to take life and long-term disability coverage to market that hasn't gone to market for several years, as well as taking the workers' comp third-party administrative service out to market. We're going to look at, as far as liability insurance, we're going to look at making sure the program is proper for a city our size. We'll look at things like whether the deductible levels we currently have are appropriate. Currently, our general liability is at $100,000 for deductible, and the remaining coverages are at $25,000. As far as the life and long-term disability, we're going to take that out and make sure that we're getting the best value for the city's money, and to ensure that our employees are getting the best coverage for their value as well. And then, as I said, workers' comp TPA service hasn't gone to market for quite a few years. We're currently with EMC Risk Services. They're doing a fine job, but I just think it's time that we make sure that we're getting the best deal for the best value there as well. That's my presentation, short and sweet. Are there any questions regarding the risk budget this year?
Any questions for Bill? Apparently not. Thank you, Bill.
All right, thank you.
And now we'll move into the health insurance management portion with Krista Hammer.
Well, I'll kick us off. I am going to get to this in a few minutes, but you can just call me Kickstart Krista if you'd like. I'm kicking off the health insurance management piece, which also includes Andrea's health promotions program. But if you want to turn to your pages 254 and 256 in your document book, that would be excellent, and you can follow along. Hopefully I'll tell the story of what you see there. But if you want to move to the, thank you, Stephanie, for the next slide. So if you remember from last year, we had planned on moving to a non-grandfathered status with all of our 3 major medical plans, and we're almost finished with our first year, so that's excellent. What that did was allow us to make it universal for adding all preventative services covered at 100%, where there would be no cost share to the employees or members who enroll in our plans. If you remember correctly from the prior conversations, our HMO product already offered that. Unfortunately, our Classic Blue and our Alliance Select, which are more like a PPO product, did not. So that they're universal now as we move to a non-grandfathered status. Also, with that movement, our member cost shares apply to everybody's out-of-pocket expenses. So that's an added bonus to reach those maximums for people. And as well as anybody who is using the services for infertility treatment, those also would be applied to the out-of-pocket maximum as we move to a non-grandfathered status. This movement also would help us make some incremental changes to the plan, so we could definitely become more sustainable and offer quality for best price. We did do some drug tier movement this past year on the tier 3 and tier 4, which moved from $33 to $35. That was already in the works, but we weren't able to do that without moving to a non-grandfathered status. For fiscal year 21-22, the tier 4 drugs, which are more of the specialty drugs, are going to move to a $60 copay for everybody. So that's already been negotiated and planned out for the 21-22 coverage year. For that year as well, we are looking to possibly add a couple of more services, which we're still in the renewal negotiation procedure for that, so I won't mention them by name. But hopefully that will also help our members manage their pain if they're experiencing pain in certain circumstances and need to have some services to help them through that. One of the major things that we also were able to do for this year for our healthcare was actually, due to COVID reasons, help us move to a more electronic process, which also saved us dollars in the long run. We had cumbersome paper packets that we could send out twice a year for once in the middle of the year for medical and vision and dental open enrollment, and another at the end of the calendar year around October for our flex spending. Starting with May last year, we went 100% online and also distributed all the forms online through email communication. So that was a cost savings to us, as well as a little bit easier to collect the information and data to get people enrolled in their benefits. we are going to continue that. So that's also continued cost savings for the upcoming years as well. Besides that, there was a opportunity that I started with the open enrollment for flex spending to do a little bit more online promotion. And that's where Kickstart Krista comes in. If you take a look at the middle benefits block here in my changes to insurance screen. Thank you to our media productions team for really taking the ball when I mentioned what I would like to do and rolling it out. So if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to just spend a couple seconds to kind of help you understand what that kind of looks like if you've never seen it before. And I think I can share my screen. And it says I cannot, unfortunately. So I don't know if you need to relinquish that, Bethany. It says I can't share while somebody else is sharing.
Krista, you should be able to share now.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Is everybody seeing my screen?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So if I can find the, talk about. Things. First thing, it can reduce payroll taxes with payroll contributions. That means you have more take-home income. It'll also provide you with immediate access to elected healthcare flex spending account funds. You can use the task card to make healthcare purchases or payments, just like using a credit card, in person or online. You can use the task app to take a picture of an invoice, bill, or receipt and submit a request quickly, or use it to pay your provider directly. You can also receive eligible reimbursements quickly with Task My Cash. And you can check balances and submit requests on the Task app. Dependent care flex spending can be spent on child daycare, after-school care, and camp. But you can also use it for elder care. Cha-ching! Healthcare flex spending can be used for many approved expenses. This includes kids' braces, vitamin hygiene products, over-the-counter meds, Band-Aids, glasses or contacts, and even contact solutions. There are even more details on eligible expenses and what task provides members in the benefits summary guide. You can find that on the HR extranet under the benefits tab. Open enrollment for the flex spending account starts on November 2nd and runs through November 20th. It's almost here. Everything is going to be online and paperless this year. It's easy and good for the environment. Look for an explanation webinar coming out the first week of open enrollment. What are you waiting for? Get enrolled in flex spending. You got this. That's all for now. Until next time. Bye-bye. I don't know if you all can hear me still. I'm going to, is there something I need to do to relinquish sharing? Are we back to the slideshow presentation? Awesome. So that gives you an idea of the theme that we're going to be running with, even continuing hopefully into open enrollment for 2021, as well as, you know, continuing some sort of informational sessions that will be able to be picked up on our HR extranet for our employees as well. All right, thank you very much, Bethany. So I'm sure everybody's interested in where we're going with our premium rates. We actually were quoted to have an 8% increase for this year, but we talked with our compliance team at Gallagher, and they are a partner right now helping us with a lot of benefit information and consideration. We determined that we would be open to a 5% increase for our premium rates while using a lot of our I'm going to call it overabundant fund balance to kind of buy that down a little bit, because we are very, very rich in that, and we can afford to buy that down. So we decided to have just a 5% increase, even though it's a little bit higher than last year. it still is below the goal that we've always set for ourselves at being below 10%. And just to give you an idea, Wellmark's business cost trend is overall at 8.42%. So it was pretty much kind of in line of what Gallagher had anticipated with us anyway. And this next screen that I have is just again showing how all of our expenditures are divided amongst the different types of expenditures we have for our health insurance. Obviously, again, medical claims are our highest at 59% of the pie, followed by pharmacy claims. Dental claims are always quite low, which is good. And actually, there is a big challenge, or I'm sorry, not challenge, but change in the type of dental claims that we did see for the beginning of 2022, the end of 2020 because of COVID. Obviously, some dental offices were not taking patients for a little bit, and we did see a little drop off there. Also, there was a little drop off with some medical claims due to that as well, just simply because a lot of people stopped going to unnecessary office visits and didn't elect to have elective surgeries. So there was a little bit difference there, but still those are our biggest pieces of our pie, followed by our excess insurance. This is our stop loss insurance. It's still pretty close to what it was for our last conversation at this time last year, around 6%, and it still stays about the same. But we do see a little bit of an increase in regards to our individual stop loss, and that's due to our experience in the last couple of years. We still have a couple of claimants who are in our category of always reaching up to our individual stop loss threshold, which is 125,000. So there are some people that will stay in that category for the rest of their lives. And it seems like we pick up different individuals every year, depending on what's going on with their health. But then our next biggest, or I guess I should say smallest expense is our other health insurance, followed by the health promotions program which Andrea will talk about in a few minutes. And then I'm clapping in the little corner there with my emoji from my Kickstart Krista campaign, simply because, again, this year is 1% over for the admin costs. So we got to really clap our hands for having such a low amount of our expenditures be contributed to the health administration. And I'll turn
now
over
we'll move on to the Employee Health Promotion Program with Andrea Cardenas.
Hi. So as Krista mentioned, our Employee Health Promotion Program, it's funded through the Health Insurance Fund. We cover a variety of areas of well-being, as shown in this slide here. This also was affected significantly by COVID, and I'll talk more about that. I think when I say significantly, most of my time in the last 10 months, 11 months has been spent on our COVID response. So while we've been able to continue some programming, that did affect things like our health screening last fall. We weren't able to have an on-site health screening. We had to cut back on some programs. So we saw a reduction in the cost on the budget in the 1920 budget year, just from COVID happening when it did. And then I'm hoping we'll be able to bring some of those services back. And that just depends on whether we see another surge and what happens as far as contact tracing and how involved I get with the vaccination distribution to our workforce. So on the next slide, this is just a snapshot of what we're talking about with health education and COVID-19. And many of you are also, you've been living through this. We've all been living through this. And it was interesting when I took a look back at how we started to see really how many things that we do now that we just kind of forgot that were new to us back in March and April. So when we started the communication and information to employees, I was talking about what is the SARS-CoV-2 virus? What is COVID-19? How do you get infected by a virus and how do you protect yourself? So just some of that kind of education, as well as getting resources out to employees, including things like hand sanitizer, which was very hard to get, sanitizing wipes, all those types of things, putting together processes and procedures to make the workplace safer, and just thinking about through all those details. I went around and met with all of our different departments, either in person or through Teams meetings, to talk through that at the very beginning. So we've talked about what you need to do, focusing on those 4 areas that we've heard so many times: staying home when you're sick, keeping your hands clean, wearing your mask, and maintaining a distance of 6 feet or more. So there's just a significant number of health behavior changes. On the very right of the screen, you'll see just a snapshot of our symptom tracking cards that we created as part of this, employees monitoring their own health and throughout the pandemic. They were very colorful. That's not even all of them, but that's just one piece that we had to implement and put in place and continue to do so as this pandemic continues. And then the last piece has taken probably the most amount of my time is the policy practice alignment with public health guidance and then the implementation of that. And so on the next slide, I'll talk more about what we're doing for our contact tracing and case management. So this is similar to what public health does, but my focus has been on our workforce. So when I'm doing contact tracing, I'm not notifying members of the public that our employees have been in contact with. I'm notifying the rest of our workforce. So that is one main difference. But ultimately, the goal of contact tracing is to make sure that if someone has symptoms of COVID-19 or they had COVID-19, that they are no longer in the workplace, and that anyone that has come in contact with them isolates as quickly as possible to stop the spread of the illness. So in the green box, this is started when I'm notified that we have an employee with COVID-19 symptoms or diagnosis. I interview those employees and establish their return to work guidelines depending on what the current public health guidance is. I follow up with them throughout the course of their illness to see how they're progressing, if it looks like they're going to be recovered enough to come back to work at the estimated return to work date, and then we adjust it as needed, depending on how their illness, how severe their illness is. When I interview the employee, I also talk to them about any work contacts, so anybody that would have been in close contact for 15 or more minutes less than 6 feet without face covering. And then I notify those employees. And usually the turnaround time is less than 24 hours, but most of the time I'm talking to them the same day that I find out, usually within an hour or two. And of course, this can be challenging because when people get their test results back, it's not between 8 and 5. It's also in the evenings. It's also on the weekends. And we need to move quickly because we want to make sure that we isolate those contacts as quickly as possible. But we also want to make sure that people aren't coming into work if they have had an exposure to COVID-19, and that they're staying home and isolating and following the public health practices. So we also I work closely with supervisors because there's another piece of communication that goes out to the departments. So I notify people directly that have been in close contact, and then we also send a notification to the department, people that they work closely with, that someone has tested positive for COVID-19. Put together communications for supervisors, and for a lot of departments, when they have that first time that they're going through it, I'll be present, either talking through that with myself, with the manager, sometimes in person, sometimes remotely. It just depends on what is needed and what the environment is like. So on the next slide, this is just an idea, just to show you. I'm not going to walk you through all the details. This is what we've returned to work look like in May. And if you go to the next slide, this is what our current return to work looks like. So I just wanted to illustrate the complexity of how things have changed as the public health guidance has changed over the pandemic. There's just so many if this, then this, do this types of situations. And it can get complicated to implement consistently. And so that's something that I've been able to do, is work with managers, work with employees, and make sure we're following those practices appropriately. and make sure they're bringing people back to work when they can, but also making sure that they're staying home if they have COVID-19 or if they could spread it to others. So on the next slide, I just want to talk a little bit about how I've integrated some of the health promotion messaging and self-care into what we're talking about with COVID-19. As I mentioned earlier, at the beginning of this pandemic, we were talking about, what is COVID-19? And there are a lot of emotions that come with that. Stress during the outbreak can be significant, and the impact to our workforce as well. For a lot of our workforce, there was initially a lot of fear about being at work because we didn't have the option to stay home because of the type of services that we provide. And so how do you protect yourself? Some of the biggest concerns for employees was their own health and the health of their loved ones. So that was a significant thing. And so when I talk to employees about, look at this list, if you're finding that these types of things are really impacting you in your daily life, impacting your ability to do work, then that tells you that it's time to seek help and to find some other resources to help you with that. And so on the next slide, I just illustrate some of those messages about self-care that I've integrated into communications. Sometimes when someone calls me, I'm the first one that they've talked to after they're notified that they have COVID-19. And so part of the message is, taking care of yourself. How do you do that? How do you do that proactively throughout the pandemic as this goes on longer? And then really focusing on all those different areas of well-being, because they're all really important to your overall health. And lastly, I want to talk a little bit more about mental well-being. I don't know if you recall last year, I talked about this program called Make It Okay. It's an initiative through the Iowa Healthiest State. And it's a program to raise awareness about the stigma of mental illness and also help people understand, what do you do if someone opens up to you? What should you say? What should you not say? And just really get across that message of, that it's okay not to be okay. In Iowa, 1 in 5 Iowans will have a mental illness in their lifetime. It's very common, but it's something that it's not often talked about. We haven't been able to implement this as much as initially planned. However, I'm happy that we were able to still provide some of this programming. This is something that I co-teach with the mental health advocate from Ames Police, and we teach it through our Mental Health 101 class. Just to give you an idea of some of the feedback that we've had from our participants. People are saying things like, I wish every employee would have this training. Please offer more of this. And then in particular, some of the feedback that we received was, as someone who has mental health issues, it just felt nice being heard. Everyone around me was listening to what was being said, and it made me so warm inside because all my life I've been called crazy, annoying, and worse things because my brain has a mind of its own. When I spoke up about how I've had a mental illness and how it felt and how it was so scary, it was nice seeing people's reaction. Like, it seems as if they were kind of shocked that someone like that was in front of them. It doesn't matter how happy the person seems. They could be going through a lot. And I felt heard even though I didn't say a lot besides when we were just in our small breakout groups. So I think that just illustrates how alienated people that do experience mental illness can feel, and how we can look at even changing that culture and building more inclusivity into our work environment by talking more about mental health and trying to reduce the stigma. If there's anything good that has come out of this pandemic, I've just heard more people being more open talking about mental illness and some of the challenges that they're facing. And this is another opportunity through this kind of programming that we can really continue to that conversation, help more people open up. On average, it takes people 10 years to seek care from a mental illness. And so we'd like to see that number go down. We want to make sure people are taking advantage of existing resources and feel okay talking about what they're experiencing. That's the end of my presentation. Do you have any questions?
Thank you, ladies. Very well done. Council, questions for any of the three of them?
again, it's just easy to forget from where I sit how much goes on to keep the organization running. It's truly impressive. Thank you.
Andrea, I just really appreciate the fact that you focused on mental health, because it is a big issue. It's no surprise to anybody, but not only in our organization, but our entire community, school system nationwide. So a quick jot down the website. I remember doing it last year, but I think I just forgot about it. But it's something it's a huge interest of mine in terms of really talking about it and getting it out in the open. So thanks for sharing that again. It's really really important. And I'm glad you're into puzzles too, because I never saw one of those red, green, blue triangular jigsaw puzzles before with that kind of complexity. But I was trying to follow the bouncing ball. So
Yes, I've become very adept at making different types of flow charts. So
well done. All right, Bethany, Andrea, Krista, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate your presentation. We're going to move on to General Government Program. Mr. Diekman.
Good evening, City Council. Just a second here. Right. So we're going to start off tonight with planning services, and then we'll move into the housing programs after we get through the planning services. All right, now why are we not advancing? There we go. So planning services, we break this down into really three activities, and they're divided up basically as divisions for us. We have current planning, which really deals with development, long-range planning that deals with policy issues, and the more forward-thinking land use issues of the city. And then we also have administrative services, which we have shared with Public Works and Fire now for about 5 years, which is really that front-facing customer service division that we have. We also support 3 boards and commissions, the Planning and Zoning Commission, the Zoning Board of Adjustment, and the Historic Preservation Commission. You interact with the P&Z quite frequently. They make recommendations on many of the projects that you work with. The Zoning Board of Adjustment really acts independent of the council and deals with smaller, more property-specific, custom or unique issues with variances or special use permits or home occupations. And HPC is our Historic Preservation Commission and deals with, for the most part, the Old Town area, administering our historic district requirements. They also have a charge to do education and outreach throughout the community, and they have a small budget that goes along with that to promote different educational activities. This is the pie chart I show you every year. I'm not going to go through it in detail, but it gives you a sense of the different primary activities that we typically do in a year. This year is a little bit different. Every year is a little bit different depending on what our points of emphasis are based on development levels or other major projects we might be working on. So for us this year, our development we actually had a bigger drop the prior year from our peaks, which were in the 2017 range. And we came back up a little bit this year. And really that kind of reflects in our single family home starts. What I put up here was our 3-year average is around 83 homes. And I think that's probably where we're going to be in the next year as well. We had a little bit higher number at 107 in the 5 years prior when we were growing at a little bit higher rate as a city, concurrently with the growth in ISU enrollment. So one thing that we're going to talk about, and the council has started this conversation, is what other kind of housing can we do in the community? That's one of your council goals. We expect some new zoning and new subdivisions to get created here in the next year to open up more opportunities for housing. I don't know that that will increase the pace of construction. I think we would be happy if it did, but I don't know that that'll happen. But having diversity and options will be good for us. One thing I did note, both in our budget highlights and on here, is our apartments. We really crested a couple years ago, and there hasn't even been a new project approved in the last year. So there's been build out of a few of the older approvals, but really nothing new came in 2020. So whether that was because of COVID or other real estate conditions, I can't really say in regards to apartments. Clearly, there's a lot of absorption that was necessary with the amount of product that came online in 2018. So I think we're still in that phase of mostly seeing absorption and balancing. I think we do have some indications that specific types of projects are probably still marketable and desirable. For example, when the reinvestment district application comes forward, we do have faith that there is a market still for those kind of urban apartments to be constructed in or near downtown. So this map is kind of indicating where our activity is for single family housing. You can see in the green dots the areas that we have been building out and we have been working on, some of them for many, many years. Like, for example, Sunset Ridge, it's out west in Ames, and it's been in development for 15 years. It's an area that only has the last addition actually is expected to be platted here this spring, but it's an area that's been building out for a long time. And we had some of the newer areas at North Ames, and then for the first time in a while, we have some newer areas in South Ames also. The blue dots indicate where there are some other potential projects that I was talking about coming online for more development here, probably in 21 and 22, and to really look at that next set of development for the city. Commercial is a little bit different story. We have been kind of consistently doing small scale commercial industrial projects. There was not a large industrial or a large commercial project last year. And as I noted here, the retail and the hospitality industry, as you all know from COVID, is fundamentally been altered, at least temporarily, if not for a longer period of time. We also had, again, just like apartments, we had a run in hotel construction. I think we've kind of, again, caught up to that, whether COVID would have stopped that regardless of COVID, whether that would have stopped or not, I can't say, but clearly with COVID, there's going to be a pause in the number of hotel projects that we're going to see here in the next couple of years. And as I mentioned, we still see the redevelopment site and the reinvestment district application on Lincoln Way as positives for commercial investment going forward. And this map is trying to give you a sense of where are we looking at commercial activity. For the most part, the large areas where there's like more than one site available are in these yellow squares. And these are areas that have been highlighted for a long time by the city, with the exception of the downtown and the downtown gateway area, which is one we established a couple of years back. So we've been slowly using up this commercial land inventory, and slowly over the last 15 years using up those sites. And the large orange hashed areas are those industrial areas of the East Industrial Prairie View area, and then potentially also along 13th Street. So really for the city, it's kind of a known commodity about where we do commercial development. And that's really where we, again, expect to see that to continue for the foreseeable future. For long range planning, we did get a few different projects done for the city council here in the last year. And we also had a number of referrals that we responded to, and other smaller projects that we worked on with the direction of the city council. We have had in our budget for quite some time a reserve for consulting assistance or to do planning studies based on council projects. In the past, that's been identified as maybe assisting in a downtown plan, possibly assisting in the beautification gateway plan. That's a council goal. It's something that's set aside for us to work with as council needs, and it's there for us going forward as well in the budget. So some of the major projects that we're still working on, multi-year projects in some cases. You've just had a report on the Downtown Plaza concept. That's an exciting project. That's a council goal that you'll be getting more information here on in February, along with the reinvestment district application. Some of the other activities from our work plan include some sign code updates, the beautification and gateway planning effort that council had as a goal. The city council extended the Ames Urban Fringe Plan with Story County and Gilbert, with the expectation that later in 2021, we'll look at an update to that. And that's all predicated on us completing the Ames Plan 2040 project. So with Ames Plan 2040, City Council had over the last year reviewed draft goals and principles to put the complete plan together regarding growth areas, housing, land use, transportation, the environment, community character. And importantly, what you see on this graphic is the decision that we made about how to support 15,000 people being added to the community. We've been on a little bit of hiatus here, working on getting you the plan back since June, when you last met with us to discuss the plan. So city staff is really working to complete a review of the draft, give feedback to RDG then so that we can give you a complete draft for your review. Our plans right now are to be able to give that to you in March, not expecting a decision the first day you get it, but to give you that first draft then in March and have a chance to give some feedback before we go back out to the public. We still expect that we can get this completed here in the summer of 2021 and have our new Ames Plan 2040. That was the end of planning services. We have one slide here for administrative services. This is the support division for fire, public works, and planning and housing. Very stable in the budget sense in that it's maintaining its positions at 5 people. We've had that for quite some time. It continues to provide support to boards, commissions, and staff. One of the bigger customer service improvements that we've done is that transition to online building permit applications. This is something that we've done through our EnerGov customer service portal. Inspections has led that. They're the ones that have really moved forward on the online building permit applications process. And that's really the summary of administrative services and planning. If there's any questions on these two, I would take those now before we go to the housing issues.
Thanks, Kelly. Any questions for Kelly? Here's not. Kelly, do you want to go ahead and have Vanessa take over?
Yep.
Good evening. I will try to get my screen up here. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I think I'm the last presentation for the night, and so I will get started here. As you know, we have several programs under housing. We have our citywide housing program, our housing and community development program, our home programs, and they start on pages 188 and 1 through 199. Okay, the citywide program, for our 2021 activities, we continue to collaborate with Our citywide program is a program that we use and have for a number of years, and it's a flow over program for helping to administrate things that happen in the housing division that are not covered by our CDBG program. And one of the main things that we do under the program is we collaborate with nonprofits and other city departments to educate the community about housing and other types of fair housing and other related events. And for our 2021 activities, we again promoted and worked with our nonprofit organizations to celebrate and make aware of Homeless Awareness Week, because it's important to highlight our human service agencies that provide that essential services to our community. We also this year continue to collaborate with the inspections divisions in their dangerous buildings program. We use funds to purchase and demolish a property at 1126 Grand Avenue, and we're hoping to make that available for affordable housing as well. We know that that property had been quite the eyesore for the community, and just this past week, it has been completely removed, and so that blight and dangerous building does no longer exist. And we're also going to continue to working with our community partners and educating and doing training for the general public in various housing related fields. Okay, going to our community development block grant program. You know, this is our biggest federally funded program that provides a variety of housing and community development needs. For 2021, we were awarded our 17th allocation of CDBG funds, just over $600,000, and we're rolling over just about $600,000 of program funds from 1920, and we're anticipating approximately $316,000 of anticipated program income. We had a success in doing a couple of programs this year, and one of them for sure, last year, we updated our annual action plan to partner with the Public Works Department and the Parks and Rec to help fund a future shared use bike path from Franklin Park over to State Avenue. And we've been successful in purchasing the property at 148 South Franklin. That property has now also been demolished. And so we'll be looking forward to the next level on getting the bike path built. So you can see the map of what that bike path will go from Franklin Park all the way over to 321 State is now Baker subdivision. And so we also relocated 3 tenants that was in that property at 148 South Franklin. And so they've all been settled, and so that's why we were able to move on with demolition. And that lot has now been completely cleared. Also, another activity that we got to do in 2021 is that we had another partnership with Habitat for Humanity for our 3305 Morningside Street, where we purchased that property. It was a blighted property for that particular neighborhood. And so we had a groundbreaking ceremony. And as you can see, what we look like before COVID hit, and then after COVID hit, we're all masked up, but we still was able to do a ribbon cutting to celebrate the home ownership of a new Habitat family and a new Habitat partnership. We also began the construction of the public infrastructure improvements, which is water, sewer, and general utilities in the Baker subdivision at 321 State Avenue. And so you now can see the layout of, we have 27 lots, and along Wilmot to the west, and State is to the east. And then we'll be, in the spring, we'll be adding Latimer Lane to the subdivision. Right now, we're still adding the infrastructure improvements at this very time. Also, we were able to solicit and select a partner developer, Prairie Fire and Builders Development Corp, to apply for low-income housing tax credits to construct, hopefully, units in the south part of the lot on Baker subdivision. And that application will be due to IFA in March. And you just recently went over the concept plan and the layout and what that would look like. And we're excited to continue to work with Prairie Fire. Also, as part of their application, they're going to be looking for us to contribute some of our home dollars. And I'll get to that as we get to our home program. So that project is moving forward. So hopefully by next August, we'll know if we have been selected to move forward to adding multifamily as part of the Baker subdivision. Also, for 2022, we don't know yet what our announcement is going to be for HUD funding. We had a big meeting with HUD yesterday, and we're hoping to know by the end of February what our allocation would be. But for right now, we're just projecting what we got for 2021, which is just over $600,000. And we'll also be submitting soon our 18th annual action plan. And I hope to be conducting public forums later this month and bringing the feedback to council. So hopefully we can get back on track and getting our action plan submitted to HUD by May 17th of 2021, if they do get the fundings announced by the end of this month. So moving on to our Home Investment Partnership Program, you know, HOME is also a federally funded program, and it's designed to exclusively construct non-luxury housing for low-income households, and we can do a variety of other housing activities like rehab, down payment assistance, tenant-based rent assistance, etc. And for 2021, we received our third allocation of home funds, which was just over $468,000. This includes admin and also some program funds. Home is a little different than CDBG. You actually can roll over both program money and admin money, which is something you can't do under CDBG. So we have been kind of holding our home allocation for the Baker subdivision. And so that's why you see a big rollover balance, because that starts from 1819 and rolls 1819 and 1920, that we've been holding that fund so that we can use that to invest in a Baker subdivision. Also, as we talked about, since we've been a home allocated community, that home requires a 25% local match. and the city has allocated the $250,000 of general obligation funds, and we're using that toward the improvement of state that will count for the local match for the next 3 years or so. And also home also requires that 15% of our allocation be set aside for a certified housing development organization called a CHODO. Whenever we create and designed by the city, then those funds would be set aside to use to help administer that type of a program for agencies that qualify as a CHODO. Also, Gwen, the funds have not been announced yet, so we're just going to project our 2021 allocation of the $400,000. And we also will be submitting our 4th action plan, hopefully this coming May, once we get back on track and again know what our funding is going to be from HUD. But we were able to, but what we're wanting to do for home this year is, now that we have gotten the infrastructure going and we know that hopefully this spring we'll get the Latimer Lane installed and the rest of the utilities. We've also been working closely with electric, and I'm sure you've heard about the geothermal that's going to be part of the Baker subdivision. So now that that bid has been received, and it looks like we can proceed with adding geothermal as part of this infrastructure site, we're going to be looking to develop some homes to be designed along South Weymouth in the subdivision, and hopefully would include some modular housing proposals, and also looking to sell some of the lots to nonprofits and other market rate developers as well, because we talked about we wanted to do a mixed income subdivision. So that is what we'll have on the horizon for 2021. And so also, again, continue with construction for the next year, and hopefully after submittal and approval of LIHTC, that application submitted in March, we'll have some idea if that construction will happen in the future. And so home is also being asked from Prairie Fire to be part of helping to lower the cost of the tax credits if we were awarded them. And so with the rollover balance that we have, we are waiting for their final request of what that amount might be, so that we can designate that from the pool of home funds that we have, and for them to add to their application that they submit to IFA. It would be better for us to use our home funds and for them to try to get home funds from IFA. So we're waiting to hear back from them as they get closer to submit their application next month. And we've added a new program this year. Like everyone else, the pandemic has really kind of impacted everything that we've been doing, and we were rewarded some CARES Act funding through the Community Development Block Grant Program, and also it's supposed to be there to help prevent, prepare, and respond to the coronavirus. And the program is to assist low and moderate income households that are 80% or less of our metropolitan statistical area with those types of funding. This program really caught us by surprise. Actually, when we were announced that we were going to get these funds, I was in the middle of trying to submit our 2021 annual action plan. We decided that this program was more important to get off the ground, so we postponed getting our 2021 action plan submitted to HUD because of the impact of the pandemic was having on not only the country, but right here in our community. So we received in the first round about $354,000, and we used the funds to provide rent, mortgage, and utility relief assistance for up to 6 months to help citizens. And to date, we've helped about 104 households out of this first round of funds. of which the largest assistance has gone for rent. And we believe that HUD had initially only allowed you to go up to 3 months of assistance, and then they changed the waiver to allow you to go up to 6. And we feel that that has made a difference to allow people to get caught up from being behind, and to also possibly look for jobs in other ways, but that would give them some time over 6 months rather than 3 months. We've been working a lot with landlords. There are a lot of people that are still about to fall off the affordable housing track, about to lose their housing. There have been several moratoriums. They have been from, one ended in December that was extended to January. Now it's been extended to March. But sometimes by the time the information trickles down to the homeowner, to the renter and to the landlord, some of the tenants have already moved out their house and they're homeless. And so it's been a really, really challenging program to try to administer it. And as you know, that we were asked by HUD to just go ahead and submit a program without knowing what the guidelines and waivers were. By the time we received the waivers, it was like in October. So we are proceeding to hopefully know that we're making an impact for the community, and also that we're going to be in compliance with programs we had already started before we got all of the guidelines. And so, let me go back. What is also a little confusing is that we got a direct round 1 allocation from HUD, and now we're also going to get a round 3 from HUD, and that's up to $356,000. And we've already submitted that application just last week, and we're going to continue with the rent, mortgage, and utility relief assistance program for the round 3. And there's it jumped from 1 to 3, so I know that's confusing for some of our customers. It's a little confusing for us, but those were direct allocations because we were an entitlement community. And so we're hoping that our application will be approved here in the next couple of weeks, and we can continue helping people. I believe we still have 35 applications on hold, and we still have people calling and submitting applications every day. So that's why we felt that continuing the 3rd round of CDBG funds for the rent, mortgage, and utilities was important to continue. We also have anticipating to receive a round 2 of COVID care funds, just over $600,000. But that round of funds is coming directly from the Iowa Economic Development Authority. Apparently, when Congress was allocating money, this 2nd round, they decided to go through states, and then states would submit it to cities. And so that's why we jumped from round 1 and round 3 of HUD to round 2 coming from the state. We have not yet implemented how we're going to use these funds because things keep changing as far as programming. The state initially was doing the same program that we were with rent, mortgage, and utilities. That ended in December, but we just found out that the state of Iowa is going to get $195 million soon from the Treasury Department for CARES Act. And they're again going to implement a rent, mortgage, and utility program. However, they're going to help people with rent for possibly 12 months. So we are looking with the state. I've been working with the state and talking to them and other of my entitlement cohorts as to how we can really use $600,000 that's going to maximize the assistance that we need in our community, in addition to households, maybe businesses, maybe nonprofits, maybe other partnerships. So hopefully that we'll be bringing you some type of recommendation after we get public input as to how that round 2 CARES money will be utilized. I want to just stop and say thank you to the Housing Division CARE staff. You know, I would not have been able to get this program where it was today if it wasn't for Andrea Buckley and Deb Emery. It felt like I was blind, the blind leading the blind, and they just stepped up. They worked for me years ago when we when I was administering the Section 8 program, and I really needed a team that could hit the ground running. And Deb Emery, who hadn't worked for me in over 20 years, I said, Deb, I need you. She said, I'll be there. I called Andrew, I need you. And they were there. And they hit the ground running. And I'm just so appreciative of them for that. So anyway, thank you to them. Also, our planning services, you know, Kelly and the rest of us, planning cannot do anything without our staff. So they want you to know from the start, they're getting ready, they're getting in shape, they're getting ready to stretch it out. So from start to finish, planning is in it to win it. So yeah, they're running down the course and they've getting to the finish line. And so we thank them for their services and their commitment and their dedication to all that needs to be done for our department and our city and our community. And that ends my presentation. Any questions?
Thank you, Vanessa. Any questions for Vanessa?
How come you're not in those photos, Vanessa?
Well, I had to take them.
Sure.
Any other questions for Vanessa or Kelly? Thank you both for your reports. All right, that concludes the budget presentation for this evening. Thank you to all staff members for all your efforts. Very well done, very well organized, and makes it easy for us to understand what's going on. So, all right, we move on to council comments tonight. Gloria.
Can I just point out something?
I'm sorry.
I just want to point out that Diane should have sent you a bunch of information. I think Nancy did too. So we sent out duplicates now. I think Nancy sent out the decisions you'll have to make and the listing. Right, Nancy? We send that out to the council. Working with the CIP, the current year budget amendments, and then the final budget you'll have to approve in the CIP. Along with that, we sent out again with accompanying memos, recommendations from Asset, CODA, your outside funding requests. Those are all before you. You have to make the decisions on. Okay. So we'll go through that. I do want to remind you that even the CIP is delicately balanced. So if you want to make a change, that we balance in the sense that those projects there equal the amount of funding we're projecting for each of the 5 years. So if you do want to make a major change, it's going to require us to move other projects. So what I'm asking, if you're going to bring up any major changes in the budget on Tuesday night, be helpful if you contact me so I can get prepared with some alternate recommendations. Or if you're confused or thinking about ways to finance things, I wish you'd contact me before that so we can prepare to react that night for you, okay? And I have to say we'll have to delay that. We appreciate you taking the time. These 3 nights are very important. A budget is more than numbers. It's also our plan for service levels. So allowing the departments to tell the story is very important for you and the public to know, again, what you're getting for the money. I always enjoy this time because I think when you come away, I hope you come away agreeing that we have a very talented and dedicated group that we've assembled to be our executive leadership team for this organization. I think they prove that every day and have great support from all the employees throughout the organization to, as ETP says, provide the exceptional service to our customers at the best price possible. So that's what we're dedicated to doing. We think the budget before you and the CIP accomplished that. So we'll look forward to next week when you wrap up and your final decisions. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Quick question on that. You mentioned something from Nancy. That came from Diane as well, right? Yeah. Okay, good. Just want to make sure I had everything. Thank you.
2 separate sources, I think, right? You got?
Yeah, I think Diane sent the packet together. It was some information from me combined with CODA and asset recommendations.
I thought you sent it separately. They're all together in that packet.
Yep, they were sent together.
Good, thank you.
Right. Going to council comments. Start with Nicole tonight.
Nothing for me?
Okay. Amber?
Nothing.
Rowan?
Nothing for me.
Thank you. David?
No, thank you.
Rachel?
Nothing tonight.
Gloria?
Just want to thank all of the staff who I did not thank and make sure that they know how much we appreciate them. And I'd like to thank Leadership Ames for inviting Amber and John and I to speak. I guess everyone was invited. We're the ones who showed up. But it was, as usual, an interesting experience talking to them.
Tim?
So I noticed on our Zoom list, we have one attendee tonight. And I didn't pay attention to these things either before I was on council. But this is no question, this is the most important work we do in the year is to approve our budget. And I'll echo what Gloria said. This is, and Steve, this is an amazing process. And when you see it all together like this in the course of these budget meetings, it really comes clear what an amazing staff we have and what a great city we live in. So the Tribune's probably not going to write anything about this, and no one's going to write us emails about how effective these budget meetings were, but I think they were really terrific. So this work starts in August, doesn't it, Steve? I think, and it's just amazing. So kudos to your team. Thanks.
Yep. I would agree with what's been said. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
All right. Thank you. Everyone have a good rest of the evening.
Good night.